Hey there, listeners, fans, people who like to tune in. I appreciate you. It's me, Greg, here with some news before we get into this next episode of Random Encounter. So starting it off, I have Crowdfunding Chronicles. Tina Ola has taken a look at what is described as an irresponsible schoolgirl simulator. Detained Too Good for School is the latest that she's been looking at in the crowdfunding world. It's a action RPG. It's got beat-em-up kind of combat, some simulation stuff, and it looks a lot like Vanillaware game, so I am intrigued. So check out what she has to say about this one. It comes to an end on August 5th, so get your money in there and get those perks. And that's it for features, but I do have a pile of reviews for you, starting with a rare one from Scott Clay, who doesn't always do a lot of reviews for us. We have Phantasy Star Online 2 New Genesis. He had a lot of hopes for this cool MMO that unfortunately didn't quite come to fruition. It's pretty neat looking, but it falls real flat in the story, so go have a look at the review, see the foibles that Scott found. Maybe if you're a big fan of Phantasy Star, that'll be enough to get you through it. I don't know, check out the review for yourself. Next up is one of those titles that you just can't say without a cool voice. Tainted Grail Conquest. I can't get low and gravelly enough, but whatever. Brian McKenzie reviewed this one for us, and it's a neat, gritty looking Western RPG. Falls pretty average. Apparently lacks a bit of polish and could use a little more work, but otherwise offers some pretty satisfying strategic gameplay and is well presented in a lot of other ways. So if you're looking for a gritty Western RPG, then look no further than this one. Bob Richardson keeps finding quirky little adventure games to play, and Mundown did not disappoint. It's really got this unique, eerie vibe to it, and if you're looking for some good horror storytelling, this might be a way to go about finding it, despite some of its control issues. Check out his review and see if you want to dive in. Steins Gate Zero got ported over to the Nintendo Switch, and it holds up really well according to Quentin O'Connor. If you are looking for yet more to add to your dark, gritty visual novel collection, Steins Gate's pretty great. We've had a lot of people speak highly of it, like Leona and Andrew Barker, and its soundtrack is pretty awesome according to Patrick, so all around this is a welcome addition to the Switch library, and if you're interested, this might be the place to play it. Neo, The World Ends With You has come on up, and it didn't quite land for Bob Richardson the way he was hoping after Twiwi, and it's just kind of a lackluster story. I mean, it's still a lot of fun and with a really neat take on a world, but it just, the story's not there, at least for Bob. Some other people have also spoken really highly of it, so I mean, check out the review. Maybe it's going to be one that works for you. The Great Ace Attorney Chronicles. We touch on them a little bit this episode with Jono. He was diligently working away on them, and having these both on the Switch now is just awesome since, this is one of the few in the series that fans have yet to get. It got an RPG Fan Editor's Choice. He loved the heck out of them, and if you are a fan of the Ace Attorney series, this is clearly one to jump in on, so go check out his review to find the details out. You might remember when we had Abe on to talk about Chernobylite when he was previewing it. Now it is out, and it still lives up to the heights that he was holding it to. It's a great gritty mystery, aside from some repetitive sequences and a little bit of a lack of response in some of the controls. Overall, it holds up to be a really great game, and if you're looking for something with a lot of atmosphere and a good creepy vibe, then go check out Chernobylite. And we have been waiting for them since the announcement around E3 times, the Final Fantasy Pixel Remasters. Brian McKenzie tackled Final Fantasy, and it looks and feels stunning, lousy font aside, and the classic issues with Final Fantasy's lack of story aside. This is a great way to revisit it, even if it doesn't have all the added content. Audrey Bowling had a fantastic review of the Pixel Remaster of Final Fantasy II. And again, it presents well. It's still a weird story and a weird take on the game, and it does include all that original, beat on your characters to give them more HP. But all that being said, it's a great way to play this game. So go check out both reviews and see if you want to get into this collection. And there we go, that is it. We had a pile of stuff to tell you about, but now it's time to talk on this episode of Random Encounter. Hey everybody, hello, welcome back to another episode of Random Encounter. I am Greg Delmage, and I'm going to turn it over to my co-host, Jono Logan, to fully introduce the show because we got to take the training wheels off, Jono. Surprise!
Oh, great. Thanks, Greg. It just drove into a dumpster.
Won't be the last time.
This how you taught Gwen how to ride a bike?
No, actually, I did not teach Gwen how to ride the bike that way, although, yes, the training wheels did come off. It was a long and arduous process. I do recommend it, but I also really don't recommend it.
What, hosting a podcast?
No, that and giving your child a bike to learn on.
Okay. Well, in that case, yeah. So, hey everyone, welcome to RPG.
The teleprompter is stuck.
Why don't you go it, and I will write a script for the next time I host.
You think this thing is scripted, John? I never script this. This is why I get in trouble half the time, because I forget things. So don't script them. I am going to introduce the podcast. It's number 220, folks. Jono will be taking over the future, which is why I sprung this on him. Not taking over, but just like for a little bit. I'm going on vacation.
Greg is taking a well-deserved vacation.
Yeah, and I'm going to get out, which we'll get into in a moment. But let's introduce everybody. So yes, Jono, thank you for joining and bearing with me, as you do.
Always.
And then we also have Zach Wilkerson from the features department and everything else.
Hi there.
Thanks for making some cool features lately. You've been banging them out lately. Your team's on fire.
Thanks. I like them.
Everyone's got some really good stuff to say, and getting more of those game primers out's pretty cool too. And yes, I'm hoping to get those maybe digitized at some point in some fashion. That'd be pretty neat as well.
Yeah, I agree.
And then we also have a newcomer to apparently like all podcasts ever, but we got him first somehow. Cory Tischbein. Thank you for coming on.
Hey there. Thanks for having me.
It is a pleasure, Cory. Thank you for joining the podcast and lending us your thoughts and voice. And then silence. Perfectly timed.
Greg, you scared him away. God.
And that was the last time Cory was ever on Random Encounter.
I think I got a little aggressive there with the mute function. I'm happy to be here, and thanks for having me.
Excellent. I'm glad. So, folks, we are, we're at number 220. I guess 2 more episodes are going to be our Make-A-Wish episode, I guess. Anyways, we got games to talk about. Some cool new stuff's taken place with us since the last couple of weeks while we were on hiatus. And we had Eva Padilla's lovely interviews that I hope you all enjoyed. But yeah, what's everyone been up to, though, since, I haven't talked to anybody in a while. I look forward to usually semi-weekly chats with Jono, and this time it was just like, get the thing out, we gotta do the thing, and that was really about it.
I was at the cottage for a couple of days.
Yeah, how was that? You made a nutty friend and a floofer friend.
Oh my god, I forgot to, I've never actually, okay, I'll make this story really, really short. Amanda and I were driving back from town from getting groceries, and just outside of the big, huge, long driveway to the cottage, there was a dog. And the dog, it was a big dog, big old fat dog, and was super friendly and just like walked in front of we were driving really slow, and it just like walked in front of the car. So we had to stop, and Amanda got out and checked out the dog, and the dog was it was really, really muddy and dirty, and it was covered in bugs, and it looked like it was having a really, really rough time. Like it had been in the woods for a couple of days. So Amanda like walked the dog all the way to the cottage, and I came along, and I'm really allergic to dogs. So we put the dog out on the porch, because there's a covered porch at Amanda's cottage, and we gave the dog some water, which he greedily just like made a giant mess of, but like drank all off, and we gave him more and more and more, and like not a bark, just the sweetest dog you could possibly imagine. Just this big old dumb kind of smelly dog. Yeah, so I went into town to pick up some dog food. And Amanda went around the lake asking people, hey, is this your dog? Do you know whose dog this is? And the dog just like took her for this massive walk all the way around the lake, just dragging her everywhere, obviously having absolutely no idea where home was. And I spent the entire day on Facebook posting like tons of messages on the various local boards. And I was calling I called the community center, and I called the post office, and I called anyone saying, hey, anyone who would ever put up a sign saying lost dog. I covered them all, and we got nothing. And the plan originally was it was going to be a beautiful night. And so I mentally named the dog Marshall for some reason. And Marshall was going to be spending the night out on the porch. And then the next day we were going to take him to the vet to see if he was chipped. And anyway, we had a lightning and thunderstorm that night, and Marshall was terrified of the lightning and thunder, obviously, and the rain was starting to blow.
It's loud.
Yeah, it was starting to blow into the deck, and Marshall was essentially crying, like whimpering. So both of our hearts broke, and the decision was made that Amanda would spend the night in the spare room with Marshall in case Marshall needed to go to the bathroom or something, and I would spend the night away from the dog. So we took Marshall into the cottage and put Marshall in the spare room, and Marshall was, again, ridiculously well behaved. Like, this is obviously not a stray. This is obviously a very well trained dog. Like, the dog, didn't even go to the bathroom on the porch, like went into the woods to use the bathroom. And Amanda got literally no sleep because Marshall, A, snored, B, stank, and C, would be very happy to be in the nice warm house, and the tail would wag and would slam against the very thin walls of the cottage, which would make a thumping sound, which would wake me up. But you know what? It was nice. The next day, I got a message on Facebook saying, I think I know who owns this dog. They live in this abandoned property just down the road from where we live. So I took the car and I drove down there.
Sounds like a ghost story waiting to happen. 30 years ago. And then you look around and Marshall's gone.
It was like an abandoned, well, a little bit. It was in a trailer, and there was the guy came out, and I looked inside, and there was a dog barking at me who looked exactly like Marshall. And the guy came out and he's like, hey, and I was like, hey, did you lose a dog? And the guy looked terrified, like I was about to tell him I ran over the dog or something. I said, no, I have a dog. Can you confirm what the dog looks like? And he like pointed to the other dog and was like that one? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, yeah, that's Blizzard. He got out yesterday. And I was like, oh, thank God. Okay, yes, we have Blizzard, which I think Marshall's a better name, but that's just me. So I went back to the place, and we took Marshall, and we walked Marshall to this trailer. And just when we got to the trailer, Marshall heard something in the woods and like took off into the woods, like pulling the leash out of Amanda's hand. And we discovered that Marshall was a hunting dog. So heard something in the woods that would theoretically be hunted. So Amanda like runs into the woods after Marshall, and I'm just there laughing like crazy because like we got to the finish line and then the dog takes off. But we got Marshall back and we delivered him and all was fine. And we got back and we were like, that was nice. We had a dog for 24 hours. We don't want a dog. But the postscript is we get home from the cottage and I sit down at my computer and open Facebook for like the first time in a couple of days. And the very first thing to pop up is a message from one of the groups that I joined in the area. And it's a picture of Marshall and his friend with a heading saying, hey, I found these 2 lost dogs in the woods. Does anyone know who they are? So apparently Marshall got really excited for his adventure and took his friend with him. But that's as far as I know. So yeah, I had a dog.
And then you had a chipmunk trying to get into the cottage constantly for your nuts.
We had a lot of chipmunks. There were...
Not the metaphorical ones.
There were a lot of chipmunks at the cottage. And Amanda I think they live in a very peaceful society until Amanda shows up with peanuts, and then they just fight nonstop over the peanuts.
It turns into Mad Max.
It's nice. They're really, really cute, and Amanda trains them and like pets their bellies and things like that. They're wild animals, but in return for peanuts,
that's endearing.
They will like hop into your hand and be super tame as long as you keep giving them peanuts. So that was my trip to the cottage. Basically, it was taking care of squirrels, and we found a stray dog. And I still think Marshall is a great name for a dog, especially a big, dumb old fat dog.
Seems fitting.
Yeah.
Zach or Cory, do you have anything as exciting as the adventures of Jono and Marshall?
Nope.
I don't have anything that exciting, but I've got 2 dogs here who weren't so happy to hear Jono describe this dog as the sweetest dog ever. But they've since calmed down.
Fired.
They may or may not actually be asleep right now.
Well, to be fair, that does put them one step above Marshall.
The secret is that they're all best boys and girls.
Yes, I have heard that all dogs are the best dog.
Not untrue. And Zach, how's it been for you outside of pumping out features with the team?
It's been good. I mean, I'm on summer break, so I went to Boston recently to visit some friends who might work at the site.
Lovely.
And I don't know. I've been playing a lot of Final Fantasy 14, which is what I do, and otherwise. Played a lot of Cris Tales recently.
We don't talk about Final Fantasy 14 around here because then John and I want to spend too much money. Stop it.
I mean,
stop it there.
And then Caitlin mysteriously appears, like we just rubbed a lamp.
And Corey's like, what's this, Final Fantasy 14?
Oh, I know what Cory knows what Final Fantasy 14 is.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I need to not know what Final Fantasy 14 is.
I saw Cory tweeted about it this morning. I was like, I almost said like, please join us, please. But like, no, I don't want to be a pusher.
I don't need much pushing on this topic.
That's basically the way we both feel too. Then look over at my family. I'm like, right, I don't have time for this.
Yeah, that's
One of these days, I'll retire and then I'll go back for Final Fantasy, 18 at that point, sure. But yeah, aside from our lives, we have played games. And, let's kick it off with you, Zach, because you did just mention it. Cris Tales was something we've heard about this game for a long time.
mm-hmm.
A hotly anticipated title.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just been sitting around with in development with Dreams Incorporated. Sick. They had the demo out. They took some really good feedback and I think kind of pivoted and adjusted and did their best to tweak things. And now we got it, and you reviewed it and on the Switch, which I hear wasn't the most optimal thing. But how was that experience?
Yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed Cris Tales. Because I was at E3 in 2019, and Hillary and Steph went to an appointment for it. And they walked out of it and they were just like buzzing with how great it was.
Mm-hmm.
And Steph and I had seen like an indie game like the day before, Hero Land, which turned out to be really bad. But we were excited about it at the time. So just how abuzz she was about it got me excited for it, like from that moment.
Yeah, they are both people of taste.
Indeed. And it's been in development for a while. The demo came out like right around E3 actually, and there were some issues with it in terms of like loading properly and things like that. Most of them got smoothed out here, so I guess to kind of back it up for a second and talk about what the game is.
No, that's fair.
So Cris Tales, and I said this in my review, like they are inspired so much by classic JRPGs. It's a turn-based game. It is very much in the style, in the way that it's built of older games. But to kind of say like what it's about, basically, the main character is like a girl in a town, as you know, kind of the standard JRPG opening. And she finds out she's a time mage, and that she has to like try to prevent some like great catastrophe from like, befalling her town and the world.
Which is pretty great because we don't often get time mages as the heroes, right?
Yeah.
It's always either like some all-powerful elemental wizard or warrior.
And they end up using it in really clever ways. So like the way that her time magic works is that like she can see like the past and the present and the future at all times. And the way that they split it on the screen is really clever. Like as you're exploring towns, it looks basically like a prism almost, where like the present's in the middle, and then like you can see like where things are going in the future and also where they've been in the past. And you can never really change too many things in the past.
It's really neat how seamless that is.
Yeah, and like the way that they allow the visual information, like for you to process it, by keeping it so consistent, like it feels like it should be information overload, but it just feels great. Like that design choice is phenomenal. And it makes sort of like side quests really compelling because, like say, like I don't know, like you help someone become like a musician because it's their dream. So like you give them some money so that they can like live their dream. Like you can literally see on screen in the future like that person realizing their dream. And that is probably my favorite part of the game. But the thing that I think everybody talks about with that game is the art style, and it is. I think the way I described it in my review was like it's like a really beautiful, colorful mural like come to life.
Yeah, like you stained glass, I think you said.
I could not believe like the difference between the cutscenes and the in-game is barely noticeable in terms of like just like the quality of the art. It never dips in terms of quality. Like each town is distinct. It is beautiful. It's not just pretty to look at. Like it is so well put together. And the fact that they had to design these areas 3 different times, it's amazing.
Yeah, like they have their personalities, and that's clear, which is super cool.
I get a real Cartoon Network circa early 2000s vibe from the art style.
Oh yeah, they actually said in the interview that we did with them that Samurai Jack was one of their biggest influences in terms of the art style. So it's definitely got that kind of vibe to it. Yeah, and the combat's turn-based, but like, and the combat is maybe the thing that the story I think ultimately is like kind of weak, and it ends up like doing some like weird time travel shenanigans to like make you repeat things over and over again, and I don't think that really works very well. So the story is like just kind of ho-hum, but the combat is really cool in its idea, but I don't think it's great in its execution. So like in combat, like you can manipulate the past and in the present, like moving enemies like into the future, and like their stats will change. and things like that. Or like you could like put a poison effect on them and then move them into the future, and then like it does all the poison damage at once. So instead of it being like a dot, it's like big damage at once.
That's cool. Does it cost like magic to do that? Like, is there a cap on that so you can't just abuse it?
It does. But, you know, and I actually don't think I mentioned this in my review. Early on, that's true. But eventually, like, you get, like, I don't know, like, your most powerful spell might cost, like, 15 magic points. And, like, I think I had, like, 900 magic points in my magic pool by the end of the game. So, like, eventually, you're just, like, you're just, like, firing off spells constantly. But, like, there really aren't as many cool different ways to manipulate that time stuff as I was hoping. There's, like, a time button press element, which if you screw up on some fights, like, you will just die. But it's kind of frustrating because the animations are really long.
Yeah, I noticed that in the demo, it was really awkward to time out because you weren't quite sure when they were going to hit.
Yeah, and like I feel like in Super Mario RPG or other games like that, like it's like a flash, like there's something that really tells you.
Yeah, like they have a bit of a cue that's a bit better as opposed to like somewhere in here I'm supposed to hit it maybe, which is I guess the downside of better graphical fidelity, more frames, more to play with, and more flash.
And I totally kind of was thinking that as I was playing it. I was like, you know, I understand, like the animations are so smooth and so beautiful. Like for them to like introduce something else into it, I think may have like taken away from the way the game looked. But yeah, and the other thing that I think is really important to mention about it is like most of the developers have Colombian heritage, and it is so influenced by like their love of Colombia. And I linked something to like Colombian architecture in my review. And like they're like, I didn't know like there are these beautiful, beautiful areas in Colombia that they're pulling from. And that's one of the reasons I think the art style works so well, because it's like, it's not only like so beautiful to look at, but like it's so particular because it is pulling from these places that they love. And I think that makes it remarkable on that front.
Is the studio based out of Colombia? I can't remember. I haven't looked it up.
No, it's not. It's just people who...
just a lot of the development team.
Yeah. Like almost everybody who was at the head of the development team either was from Colombia or like their parents were from Colombia, I think.
Well, that's cool.
I could be wrong on that, but I know at least that like some of them were from Colombia because I've seen some interviews. But yeah, it ultimately, I think the game ran too long. It's like 30, 35 hours, which for a game like that is like impressive. But I think that they like, I don't know, as they were like the development took longer than they thought, and they came up with like this other cool idea. And like, well, let's find a way to like put this in the game too. And I'm like, okay, well, like the game worked really well for the first 20 hours. And then the last 10 dragged on a little bit, and like time travel and like, you know, Final Fantasy VIII, the end, like it's not the real boss. But you know, that's also like, to me, like that's kind of cool because like you can see how much they love JRPGs. They just like maybe pulled some things that I don't love about JRPGs into the game sometimes. But overall, it's more than the sum of its parts, just because like there's so much love on the screen. And the soundtrack is absolutely fantastic. This got released on SoundCloud and like Spotify today. Everybody should go listen to it. It is beautiful.
I liked what I grabbed. It was hard trying to find samples to listen to.
That just happened this morning, so that was probably why it was hard to find samples.
Yeah, I think I only was finding it. You could buy it on like Steam and on GOG as part of like the bundles or on their own, but otherwise, yeah, no streaming services or online stores were stocking it just yet.
So yeah, that's Cris Tales. I really enjoyed it. It's beautiful to look at. I would recommend it to people who like turn-based RPGs. The Switch, the load times were outrageous, but I've heard that like on the Xbox Series S, it's not much better.
So it's just poorly optimized.
I think so.
I wonder if that's like how it's constructed. If it's like in each map, if it's the world built 3 times and then layered on top of each other, so it's trying to like render all 3 at the same time, and then basically that prism acts as a cutaway. Then I can see that being really demanding.
Yeah,
I don't know technology in that regard either, so I'm talking to my butt, but just it sounds demanding.
I imagine if you were playing with an SSD, it would be better. I haven't. I guess I should have, but I'm curious, like to see like people who played on the PS5, like what the load times were like there. But like anybody you read who wrote a review for the Switch was like, there are some people who are way harsher on the load times than I was. Like I got used to it eventually. Like I've played Suikoden 5. It's like I know what terrible
I
load
played
times are
PlayStation
like.
games. I know how that goes.
But they were actually maybe just as bad, if not worse, than any game I've ever played, really. For what it is, you know what I mean? Like it's not like it's loading like this massive cutscene. It's like just loading the game, and every time you went into a random battle, it was rough.
And it's a good looking game, but it's not what I would call a real challenge for current gen consoles to run, I would imagine.
Yeah, even like Bravely Default 2 would arguably be more demanding, and even it had egregious load times for the scope of that game.
Well, don't worry. I hear that they're going to be releasing a Switch Pro any day now, so that'll fix the problem.
I can't believe they didn't upgrade the processor. I mean, I understand probably why, but man,
Yeah, at this point, I feel
so
like
many
it's
games I feel like lately are struggling with it. Like if you ever saw like SMT3 on the Switch, like I've watched load times for that, and it's terrible. But I'm playing
Yeah.
SMT3 on PS5 right now, and it no load time. So yeah, I don't know. It's a good game. I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed playing it.
It's interesting. The graphic style, I mean, ignoring the fact that the graphic style is gorgeous, but it reminds me a little bit of, have you played Dishonored 2?
No.
Dishonored 2 has this great level in it where you're in a mansion, an abandoned mansion, and it's the elements have taken it over completely. And you have this item that allows you to see what the mansion looked like in the past, and you can switch between the two time periods. But you're like walking around with this, it's basically a spyglass in front of you, and what you see in the spyglass is like live what's going on in the past as you look. And
That's really cool.
It's a super fun mission. I think it's the best thing in that game, and this reminds me a little bit of it, where you get to see the changes you make in real time. You get to see the past and see it's a unique look that puts a nice,
very neat.
That puts a nice spin on the traditional Chrono Trigger style of changing the past and to alter the future.
Absolutely, because you don't have to hop into your time travel vehicle to see the changes this time, and they're just like so immediate.
Just gotta hop your frog through.
Exactly. It's very satisfying. That's my favorite part of the game. Like that was so cleverly done.
Now the story you're saying is kind of rote. So like, yeah, nothing you really found like really was poignant or touched you, or like it could be something, I guess, that hopefully they'll grow on and maybe we'll see like this could benefit from another entry and further exploration.
I mean, I just think that the writing in general was pretty flat. The characters were all very one note. Like there wasn't anybody who I thought was like anything except like a kind of bad cliche version of some JRPG stereotype. Like it wasn't horrible. Like I just like didn't really care about the characters.
It wasn't I Am Setsuna or Lost Sphere. Is that the other one was?
Yes.
Yeah, I haven't played those two, but
just a bit too reductive for their own good.
I'm an apologist for I Am Setsuna, but we might get into that later.
I really want to play both of them still regardless, but yeah, I think that I heard that was kind of one of their biggest failings was again trying to emulate and just being too basic, too simple, and not innovating enough.
And I think that the game has a lot of innovation.
Okay, that's good.
So I wouldn't necessarily level that criticism. I'm like, if I'm comparing it, like I've played maybe like, I don't know, 8 hours of I Am Setsuna, and like I was like, okay, I got what this is doing, and I've had enough. This game definitely has its inspiration. Like it pulls from it from a different perspective, I think. Like, so I might think that they pull too many different influences in and do too many things, but like they weren't doing it as like a cash grab or like we're going to make the next Chrono Trigger. Like they were like, we love these things and we're going to put them in here.
It just wasn't exclusively to reiterate it and capitalize on nostalgia.
Yeah, it felt like its own thing. But yeah, I mean, like I just think that like the writing didn't match like if I really cared about the characters, I think it could have been like an upper echelon RPG. But they never really got there, which is okay. I'm really excited to see what they do next because I think this is probably going to be successful enough to allow them to make more games, which is good.
I hope it is. It's getting fairly, I mean, you gave it an 85, which is a really solid score. And a lot of people are really enjoying it, it seems. It sounds, you mentioned in the review how you feel that the side quests are the most successful thing in the game in terms of the satisfaction of seeing your actions make an actual impact on the past and the future, or I guess just on the future, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
What would you say, just out of curiosity, how do you think that they could better incorporate the satisfaction you feel from the side quests into the actual game itself?
It's a good question. And I didn't want to get, and I don't want to get too spoilery here, because you also will see impacts of like general game choices. And one of the things is with the side quests, like if you don't complete all the side quests in a town and you get locked out of them, like it's very linear in the first 15, 20 hours, like you'll eventually get locked out. Like it'll even say like, hey, you're going to go basically fight the final boss of this area. And if you haven't completed the side quests, then like you can't. But like more side quests you complete, the more choices you have about like, you're going to make some choice at the end about like what is going to happen in that town, like who's going to run the town, for example. But your choices are limited if you haven't completed all the side quests. And so that will make a difference in terms of the way that like the whole town looks sometimes too. And I thought that worked too. I thought that was good. It was just like the overarching narrative. I thought, I don't really know what they could have done with the overarching narrative, except for just like stop. 10 hours before they did, and it would have been fine, because like in the last 10 hours, like there are no side quests. Like you're literally just like going back to old towns and like running through dungeons again and like fighting, some bosses that you've already fought before. So I honestly, I think that like if they had made the writing better for the main characters, that would have improved it.
I mean, if there's one word you don't want to hear in relation to a time travel game, is linear.
I actually didn't mind the linearity of it early on because like it almost felt like it had to be like that in order to make it function. It becomes very non-linear in the last 10 hours, and I actually think that's like the weaker part. So I didn't have a problem with linearity. I really didn't. I thought it actually worked.
That's a shame, because I mean, in Chrono Trigger, I feel that the strongest part of the game might actually be the non-linear end game, where you're traveling around the world fixing problems and things like that.
And for someone like this, where she can see into all times at all time, you would think it wouldn't be linear, because she's literally breaking the linear fact of time.
Yeah, it's a shame that they didn't save some side quests for that last 10 hours when you're roaming around again
and or cut it.
Yeah.
I mean, like you get like to like ride a dragon in the last 10 hours. Like that's cool.
It
but
is.
like, again, like I was like, you guys decided that you wanted to have flying mechanics and you couldn't make a way to make that work earlier in the game. So then you just made it longer so you could do it. I mean, like, again, like I feel like I'm being more harsh than I feel about it. I liked it a lot.
But you gave it an 85, so you obviously very much enjoyed the game.
I did.
Yeah, although I'm expecting angry emails about like, sounds like it should have been a 75 there, Zach.
That's why I hate review scores so much.
It looks really cool, and I'm glad that you overall did like it despite some of its failings. Like it's been one that's been on my radar, and largely just because it has a pretty box. But I am glad to hear that it mostly holds up technically, and it's going to be kind of cool. I saw also when I was putting together the footage for your edit of your review, it like even like the fighter character who kind of like fights with like shield stabby arm things or something, whatever, but like even he gets like magic and stuff like that. So it seems like it's like where the class is pretty rote in terms of like the gear and stuff, because like you were doing all these side quests. Like, are you trying to get gear? Does it unlock abilities? Like, what is the benefit to doing aside from the satisfaction of I did a nice thing?
I mean, honestly, like the side quest rewards, like you'll get like an accessory that's expensive maybe at that point. Like they're not amazing, they're good.
It's not like you're trying to find like rare one-time only things by doing the quests.
No, I mean, it was really just like the satisfaction from a story perspective.
A good deed is its own reward, Greg.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I want an ultimate weapon, Jono.
They give you the motivation for it.
I helped this old lady cross the street and she didn't give me a sword. What the hell?
I want to break worlds, lady. Either way, it still looks pretty cool. And you can even play it on Stadia. That's fine. This thing's on everything but toasters. So
it's kind of funny because if there's one thing you definitely won't be able to play on it in the future, it's a Stadia.
So yeah, that came out. It looks awesome, and we had another awesome game come out. Like we've got two people on here who played bangers, which has been great. Because Monster Hunter Stories 2 Wings of Ruin has been also on our radar for a while. The first one. I picked up the first one back when the sequel was announced. I was like, oh, that's coming up. And I think they actually had a sale around that time too, because they know what they're doing. And since I still have my 3DS, I was like, I'm picking this bad boy up. And they haven't, for some reason, my brain might be lying to me. They haven't announced that they're porting it to the Switch, right? This is the first one. That's not a thing, right?
That is not a thing.
Okay, thank you. I'm not crazy.
If this is successful, however, I suspect that Nintendo would be happily would charge you upwards of $60 to $70 to play Monster Hunter Stories on the Switch.
Remaster. Yeah. Because it's still a pretty game. It looks real good on the 3DS. Like, I've been really enjoying it. It impresses me how much of a draw distance that game has. And yeah, it has me hotly anticipating this one. So, Cory, you got to play this one. And if I recall, I think you had said this is your first foray into any form of monster hunting.
Yeah.
How was that? Because you're not hunting them really, I guess, so to speak, in this one.
Well, I mean, spoiler alert, I gave it a very positive review, and it is my first Monster Hunter game. So that should tell you how accessible it is for newcomers.
Yeah, nice.
And just like you said, it's Stories is a monster collecting spinoff from the main series. So instead of hunting monsters, you collect and battle with them.
Yeah, and you're not like Ash where you sit in the background and like let them do it for you. You're up there with them.
You are up there with them. You don't always, find yourself as effective as they are, but you are up there with them. Otherwise, I really think pretty highly of the game. I strongly recommend it, but it does otherwise follow in the footsteps of Pokemon and kind of other monster collecting games that came before it, in that the real draws here are the monster, or here it's called Monstie, which gives you a sense of the lighthearted vibe at play.
It's very cutesy for sure.
Yeah.
You get an animal companion. I mean, come on.
Yeah. I enjoyed that, but I think that's getting a mixed reception generally.
Yeah, it's know the audience. I mean, I like it. I'm still open to that stuff. Like, my daughter is 11, would adore that sort of stuff, right? And I've yet to get her to try the first one, but I think she'd really like it. Whereas the complex systems of Monster Hunter World and the mainline games would be a little more elusive for someone her age, right?
Yeah, I think that's right. Although, interestingly enough, so the combat here is actually pretty complex in a good way. So, like a lot of other RPGs, the battles here turn on a weapons triangle.
Right, yeah.
So each of your attacks is associated with one of three elements. You've got power, technical, and speed, and each of those is effective against another. So when you use a move that's effective against the type of attack your enemy Monstie uses, you contribute to what's called your kinship meter. And the game will give you a hint about like the type of attack that your enemy is going to use. So a Monstie might, for example, electrify itself and dart around a bit in place, which is the game's way of telling you that it's going to attack with speed. So once you land a few type effective attacks, you fill that kinship meter I mentioned, and then you can actually ride your Monstie at that point, which like looks and sounds kind of ridiculous, but you boost your attack and defense quite a bit, which makes battles, especially boss battles, a whole lot easier. And then if you land a few type effective moves while you're riding, you can use these really powerful skills that are called kinship skills that wrap up most battles pretty quickly. And frankly, this is a hard-ish game. So you're kind of going to need to match your types and unleash those kinship skills to get through most of the bosses.
I remember getting my butt handed to me if I guessed wrong or didn't get it too much in a row. Like, it could be very punishing if you're not on it, but once you get it, you get it.
Yeah, and the game is fair about kind of giving you hints, which is something I think the first game was criticized for, that the attack type patterns were kind of irregular and unpredictable.
I was gonna say, like, when you said they had that visual cue, I'm like, I don't remember that. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, it's a little simpler here. And this whole system to me sounded really convoluted, honestly, and kind of strange. But once you play a few battles, it clicks and feels really fluid in action. And there's a degree of strategy to it that, and I hate that I'm saying this, there's a degree of strategy to it that's kind of absent from Pokemon. Like, I'm a huge Pokemon fan, but battles in that game strike me as, let me spam my like most powerful ability, and that can get me through most battles.
Yeah, like, I was even talking about that with my daughter, who's an avid Pokemon fan, as anyone who has listened to the podcast in the past knows. And just, I find, there's not a lot of nuance to a lot of like those support abilities and stuff. Like, I think they have a bit more play in competitive play and such. Definitely not for single player such stuff, because you're just kind of wasting a turn to be like, I'm going to buff my Pokemon, when you're like, you can probably just use those 2 turns to take it out in 2 hits as opposed to buffing for 1 big hit. Like, I always found that was kind of like the give and take.
Yeah, I mean, this system is a far cry from that, and that you'll need to not just match the types that I was talking about, but you will need to rely on support skills and items.
Oh, good.
Greg, I agree. I think that is a good thing. I think some people, they might not be looking for that level of complex combat, but I think it is a good thing.
Nice.
And I honestly found that this is one of the only RPGs I've played recently that really maintained my focus during battle. Like, with all the systems that we just talked about, I really never found myself like zoning out or, like checking my Twitter timeline during a longer JRPG battle. Like, that never happened here.
Or equipping a stapler to do it for you.
I'll confess that with other games I won't mention that I also think highly of, I find myself zoning out a little bit in battle, but not so here.
It can. Yeah, the grind is called a grind for a reason.
And the other thing that this game kind of draws you in to do that it also does really well is the Monstie collecting. So the game litters these Monstie dens across its pretty expansive world, and most of these dens are randomly placed throughout the maps. So whenever you go into a zone or out of a zone, new dens pop up, old dens disappear. And each den is basically a small dungeon that has a Monstie egg at the end for you to steal. And with a few exceptions, the dungeons and the eggs in them are randomized. So every time you come across one, there's a bit of excitement about what you might be scooping up. And some eggs are rarer than others, and they contain the game's more sought after Monsties. And very weirdly, you smell the eggs and you weigh them, and that kind of tells you their rarity level as you're picking them up.
They're just like tomatoes.
They're just like tomatoes, except together they spawn 128 different Monsties that populate the game. And all those Monsties, they have, just like in Pokemon, right? They have like different stats and different abilities. So if you like collecting monsters, if you're a fan of Dragon Quest monsters, if you like the Pokemon games, you're going to get lost here pretty easily. I mean, I certainly did. I frankly had a hard time stopping myself from monster hunting, and turning back to the main quest just because it was so addicting.
As Capcom puts their fingers together, good.
Well, and I won't dwell on this too much, but just like Zach was talking about, the story here, it has its moments. It has some moving plot twists and some interesting characters that you can invest in, but it isn't the main attraction. And it is a little cookie cutter in how it plays out. And I talk about that more in my review, but definitely don't go into this one looking for a Final Fantasy type story.
Okay.
But it is a step up from Pokemon and its ilk. Like there is a little more going on here. It is, it does have more characters. There are actual plot twists. And I won't say more than that. I don't want to spoil anything, but the story is not the draw, but it isn't terrible.
Yeah, I remember that from the first one too. It was, you kind of you're like, I know what I'm getting with this, but I'm still kind of invested in it. And yeah, you're kind of there for the gameplay, but at least it's not a very rote story.
Yeah, and another aspect of the game that kind of stuck with me, and this is just like Cris Tales, the graphics here I thought they were stunning. The game drops the more realistic graphics that the mainline games use.
Right.
And it kind of throws in this anime aesthetic that to me looks like a mix of Dragon Quest XI and Breath of the Wild.
Okay, cool. I get very Yokai Watch vibes.
Yeah, that's a fair description too. And given the game's kind of more lighthearted vibe, this shift complements the tone and I think makes the game a little bit more effective. And, they're not the most detailed graphics. They're relatively simple, but they really ooze a lot of...
yeah, they're cartoony anime. Yeah.
They ooze a lot of charm, and you could tell that a lot of care went into them, especially the environment. So the game is, it's a pretty long game. It's like a 40 to 50 hour game, and there are some huge semi-open world zones in the game. You've got beaches, volcanoes, snow-capped mountains. So you're going to spend a lot of time exploring. And it's frankly a joy to do. The areas are they really invite you to explore them. Most of them, or maybe all of them, are pretty stunning. And if you played the demo, you've kind of messed around in Hakalo Island, which is the opening area. And I thought that was maybe the coziest beach area I've ever seen in an RPG.
Is that in one of your screens that you grabbed?
Yeah, it's in one of...
Yeah, it looks gorgeous.
It is. You don't spend a whole lot of time there, but the other areas, they match that level of quality with the visuals. I also thought the music in the game is another one of its selling points. All the tracks are pretty heavy instrumentals, but they're all really poppy and upbeat in a way that matches the game's style. And especially the battle music really energizes you. For example, like when the battle music was playing, there's a couple different tracks that the game kind of switches between for battles. But they're all really energizing. And it was hard for me to honestly sit still when it came on. And I'm not really, I don't have the most robust musical vocabulary. I'm not a music person, but I can tell you here the music was absolutely stellar and really fit the game's tone quite well.
Excellent. Question for you, because that's the other thing I find everyone comes to Monster Hunter for, is the gear. Yeah, how was the gear hunting for your various weapons and your various armors that are interpretations of the Monsties?
So I haven't played the mainline games, but my understanding is that those games rely pretty heavily on a crafting system where you kind of collect monster parts and create gear that way. So that is in this game as well. There are two types of crafting systems here, and one of them ties into gear. Whenever you beat Monsties, you get a score on how well you did in battle. And the better you do in battle, like the quicker you turn out, the quicker you defeat your enemies, the more kinship skills you whip off, you get a better score. The better score you get, the more monster parts you get, and the rarer parts you'll end up getting. And so you can use those parts, just like in the mainline games, to create all sorts of weapons, armor, and accessories. Some of the more notable flagship Monsties, they have their own gear sets in the game. And the crafting is really, really accessible. It's really simple. I mean, you just kind of give the blacksmith whatever ingredients they want in exchange for the item.
It's more or less the same in the mainline games too.
Oh, all right. In my mind, it was more complicated there. So,
well, it is. But it boils down to that, where you collect the ingredients and you give them to the person to craft what it is. But it's just, there's always just such a minutia of ingredients. That's the thing. Whereas I think this one's a lot more accessible, was my understanding.
Yeah. There aren't as many ingredients. So like each Monstie might have like 2 or 3 types of things that might drop. And I found that you didn't really need to do a whole lot of grinding to get the parts that you need for good gear, which I appreciated. So the crafting is accessible, simple, and you definitely have to use it to get good gear. But it isn't the draw in the same way that the battling and collecting is.
Yeah, because that's basically what you're there for in the mainline games, is to get cooler gear to fight cooler monsters. That's more the draw, and then the stories, it's there. But you're coming there to fight big things and try and find as many mandibles and vertebra and whatever else that you need, tufts of hair to make the various pieces you need.
Yeah, you'll see some of that here. But when you put on new gear and when you put on new accessories, you can see them on your character and they look really cool. It's just the game doesn't really kind of spend a whole lot of time pushing you to get new gear or kind of focusing in on that system.
Gotcha. It's more about the Monsties.
Yeah. And you said you played the first game, so you're probably familiar with the channeling system where you sacrifice a Monstie to kind of beef up another one.
Oh yeah, I hadn't done it yet, but I think I had that explained to me. It kind of reminded me of Monster Rancher, when you like breed your monster, so to speak. You splice them into the new generation of monster.
Yeah, I mean it's like that here. It's got that same kind of moral dubiousness, because here you basically sacrifice a Monstie and you could take one of their active or passive abilities and transition it to another one. And each Monstie has like a grid of about 9 or 10 open slots into which you can put in other Monsties' active and passive abilities. And so you're basically offering up Monsties throughout the game, kind of waving goodbye to them, just like Monster Rancher or just like in Pokemon when you release a Monstie. And you can take their abilities and give them to another Monstie. And I struggle with this at first because the monsters they're all really cute. If you've seen a single screenshot of this game, you know that to be true.
Yeah.
But the system's really fun because you can you have a lot of incentive to catch as many Monsties as you can, and then to kind of strategically sacrifice them to shape your team as you like. If you want to have a team that's focused more on defense, you can use this system to bolster that. If you are more like me and you're more offense focused, you can catch Monsties that have high offense and speed and kind of sacrifice a good number of them to optimize 1 or 2 to see you through the game. And I thought that was a nice touch that gave me a bit of control as to my team and kept me incentivized to hunt Monsties.
It seems pretty inescapable with these kind of games that you would have, that there's always some morally questionable act in terms of how you are dealing with it. Like whenever you're going to be involved in forcing monsters or creatures to fight for you, there's going to be some questionable aspect to it and how you raise them just for digital cockfighting, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, on that point, you're also, as I mentioned earlier, you're taking eggs from dens and quite literally just stealing them. That left me feeling kind of gross.
Yeah, how did you not tank the population?
Well, again, they're randomly generated in perpetuity. So they just keep coming out.
Okay, good. So you're not going to ruin the ecosystem.
No. There's not that level of guilt on your shoulders. And maybe the best advice I can give is to not follow my lead and not spend a whole lot of time thinking about that. But there is some moral gray area there, if I could call it that.
Right.
But again, I really enjoyed Monster Hunter Stories 2, and I never played a Monster Hunter game, and I am absolutely raving about this one. So regardless of whether you've played a Monster Hunter game before, if you like monster collecting games, monster battling games, or if you like JRPGs more generally, I do think this one's worth checking out. I mean, it's really beautiful. It has deep combat, and the monster collecting is frankly pretty addictive.
Follow-up questions from you two at all?
I mean, I don't have any follow-up questions except for I love everything you just said, and now I know what game I'm purchasing next.
Yeah.
You tell me combat is that's like that deep. Oh, I'm there all day.
The combat really is probably the best RPG combat I've played in a long time. So you won't be disappointed.
I feel like you played Persona 5 Royal pretty recently too, right? I feel like the combat there is excellent.
Yeah, I've been playing that game for about a year now. So
that sounds like probably the appropriate amount of time to play that game.
If you're not trying to blast through it. I think you said, Cory, but to refresh me, there's just the 3 types in the triangle, right? So I'm wondering if, as the series goes, if they're going to try and Pokemon it a little bit and try and introduce quote unquote new types.
Yeah, I think so. You've got the attack types that I talked about: power, speed, and technical.
Yeah.
Monsties themselves, they have like associations with particular elements, but unlike Pokemon.
Okay, that's right.
Yeah, like they're not as typecast as Pokemon, right? Where in Pokemon you got like a poison type, fire type, and that'll kind of determine so much about them. It's a little more fluid here, and their type affinity doesn't really play the same role in the game.
It sounds like a considerably more user-friendly entry into the series than a lot of the other ones. I mean, I have heard various people on the site very passionately talk about Monster Hunter. Solosi, for example, is a massive fan of the series. I've always thought, wow, this sounds really, really cool, but it doesn't quite seem like a thing that I would really get pulled into. But hearing you speak about Monster Hunter Stories 2, it sounds like a much more accessible game for more traditional JRPG fans. Like, there's turn-based combat. It has monster collecting, very much in the vein of Pokemon, like you said. I can see myself playing this, and from that, be like, I want to explore more of the series, and not just the previous game on the 3DS. Like, actually get into the series proper. Do you have any desire to hop into like Monster Hunter World immediately or anything like that?
Yeah, I definitely do. So throughout this game, you're collecting these Monsties and battling these Monsties. I didn't have a point of reference, and so I found myself kind of Googling, hey, what does this Rathalos look like in the mainline games?
It's your nightmares. That's what it looks like.
Yeah, some of them really do look like nightmares in both games, actually.
Worse to fight.
They do a good job of translating the nightmares into cute monsters.
I'd like see them change that weird fleshy thing with teeth into Monster Hunter Stories, but I invite it.
Oh, I got bad news. I mean, I think that thing is in this game, and I think that's where my mind is going. I forget. It has a funny name.
I'm blanking on its name right now, yeah.
But it's one of the scariest looking things I've ever seen.
Solosi is screaming at us right now in the ether. It's this, you idiot.
But Jono, definitely I feel an interest in checking out the mainline games. I have a pretty bad case of backlog anxiety right now, so like I don't feel positioned to do that, but it's on my radar.
Oh, what's that? Backlog? I'm not sure I understand quite what you mean. There are games that are on your list of things you'd like to play. Why don't you just play them all? Come on. Sorry, I couldn't maintain that for very long.
Well, if you want to share your time machine where we can just kind of pretend time isn't a variable, I'm open to that.
Well, we got to talk to Zach for that. Zach, what did you use for Kristen?
I don't have to work in the summer.
Can you imagine like having that power that Cris Tales has? Be like, wait, do I ever get time to play these games? I don't. Oh no.
You look in the future and your copy of Final Fantasy XIV is still in its shrink wrap. Like,
yeah.
I can think of many people for that would be a nightmare though, if they just woke up from their sleep and they were like, oh, was it all a dream? And they look over and they've never played Final Fantasy XIV. They're just like, I spent that long in a dream playing Final Fantasy XIV.
I don't even want to tell you how many hours I put into it last year. It's like I don't want to say the number.
You basically just made the plot of an anime.
That's true.
But yeah, this sounds awesome. I am very excited to eventually get to this one as well. I really have been wanting to get back to Monster Hunter Stories, and this is piquing my interest. Again, I have just too many games, too many projects, too many things going on in life to get back to it, but this is a very good reason, I think, to go check it out. Otherwise, I know, Jono, you and I have been kind of puttering away at a few things. I just had a preview go up of Kitaria Fables from P-Cube, and Twin Hearts were the developers. Because P-Cube, who's the publisher, was holding a preview event. Got to do a Q&A with this and another title that doesn't fall into our coverage that we were looking at. And yeah, this game, it's been on my radar since it was kind of teased back at E3. It's a farming sim action adventure, except everybody is anthropomorphic animals. Your main character is a cat, hence the name Kitaria Fables. And you can interchange your fur willy-nilly. And you're interacting with bears who are blacksmiths and bunnies who farm, and polar bears who are sages, and commander tigers, all kinds of cool stuff. Like, it's just a cutesy little animal world, kind of like a little, not quite Redwall, but kind of has that vibe. It's stylistically stunning and well executed. It's a beautiful looking game. What I played so far in the preview has been actually really quite fun. It's, as much as it's got the farming aspects to it, it's really, I found, more action RPG than it is farming sim, or action adventure game, I guess, because the RPG elements are light because you don't get experience or level up in that regard. All your growth is determined by the equipment that you upgrade, much kind of like, say, Moonlighter. So you don't level up, but you get gear, and you can craft items with people in town, and you can harvest your vegetables, and people will turn them into food that you can eat to get buffs and potions and stuff like that. So that's all kind of neat. But yeah, you could literally leave the farming aspect aside if you really wanted to, but it would make your journey harder because you need it.
Why would you?
Yeah, certain quest things, and it's a nice little break from what you're doing. But it seems at this point to be a very rudimentary version of it. It's the game wears its inspirations on its sleeve of like Rune Factory and Stardew Valley, and of course Harvest Moon and Story of Seasons. But it's most akin to Rune Factory, but heavily leaning more towards the action adventure aspect as opposed to the farming stuff. So there's less customization in terms of your farm and all that stuff, but everything you equip seems to change you. And I did like one thing, that the equipment isn't simply just like, I put on a piece of armor and now I have higher defense. Like, you can actually have some strategy in how you want to do that, because there's certain things you'll get that will give you a higher movement speed, so you can be a little more dodgy when you're fighting things, since everything's real-time action combat. Or you can just have better magic defense or better magic power. So you kind of have to play around with your ability sets and such like that. And then you have 3 types of attack. So you have a sword that you can upgrade, you have a bow that you can upgrade, and then you can unlock different elemental magic types. So you have a fair amount of flexibility for how you want to play the game, which I thought was really cool for this title.
Yeah, couch co-op sounds like a nice feature too.
It is. I wanted to get time to play with Gwen for the preview, but it just didn't work out, unfortunately, with our schedule that weekend once we got the preview code in and had time to play it.
Because this certainly does look like a game that Gwen would like, and it's obviously age-friendly.
I could see her and a friend of hers have I have one particular friend of hers in mind who I know would adore this. I mean, they're all fans of being cat peoples. I think either I or Gwen has mentioned it on the show before. There's a game called Cris Tales, which is essentially Stardew Valley, except you're cats, but not like anthropomorphic cats. You're 4-legged cats. So it's like warriors combined with Stardew Valley. And you're just going around and you get into like fights with them. I've been meaning to sometime do like a retro review actually of it, because it seems to have pretty robust like RPG features. So this is very much like, if you like those kind of games, this is very much going to be up your alley. Yeah, I was playing it on Steam though, and like it definitely recommends playing it on controller, and it's going to be on Switch. I could see this working really well, although as Zach pointed out, Switch sometimes has some issues, and it's possible this game could chug on it a bit because, I mean, the world isn't huge. Like, it's a very big world to explore, but it's compartmentalized into kind of like little area maps with a few little exits, and then they load and go off into the next zone kind of thing. So that might help it, but it's not like Cris Tales seemed that huge either, but who knows, right? It also could be the optimization on the developer side. I'm not sure. It was pretty smooth for me though, and I was playing it on the highest settings. So, and my computer's pretty beefy, so I'm sure it'll be fine. But I could see it playing really well on something like that on the go. And yeah, couch co-op with a friend on like any other thing would be a lot of fun. And I do want to play that with the preview version or the beta version that we got with Gwen at some point and see how she likes it, because I think she'll take to it pretty well. And the downside is basically just makes the game easier because there's no scaling or anything with enemies when you add another player. Yeah, so you're just setting yourself up just for more fun and tactical battles just to help you mow things down a lot easier. And the game is like kind of has that MMO aspect of every once in a while you'll come across a foe that's clearly bigger and a different color than everything, and is obviously a rare monster. Like I met this big purple slime in the first map, and I was like, I can go take this on because it's skill based and not stat based. You theoretically could take on anything you want if you have enough patience to just wail and dink away at its HP. But as soon as it lands a hit on you, you're pretty much done. But if you can keep dodging enough and rolling around, you could take it on. But I did a few hits on it, and it landed a couple hits on me that I quickly mowed down some bread and got back in there. But I was like barely doing anything. I'm like, this is going to take me at least half an hour to 45 minutes to get through this at this point in my career. I do not want. So I quickly ran away. But maybe it's a little more accessible early on. If we upgrade to the next sword and the two of us try taking it on, maybe I'd have a better chance. I don't know.
Well, when the game actually comes out, that might be a fun game to have Gwen on the show again.
Yeah, it could work out depending on how that all falls with the reviews and such. But it's I showed it to her back when we got the announcement trailer for it, and she was very much on board with it. The only reason I think she hasn't played is just time, and kids, you want them to play the things to help you out with this sort of stuff, and they're like, but I'm not interested in that right now. I want a Roblox. Fine, go play your Roblox.
I think that games like this are fantastic. Mm-hmm. It's easy for us to get wrapped up in, I guess, the hardcore RPGs or I guess, more adult games. And I really do like that there are games that are available that both adults and children can enjoy, like this. I guess to an extent, Monster Hunter Stories 2 as well. Maybe not quite Gwen's age, but
she has played it a bit. She fell off.
Oh, she has played,
but she still likes it in the idea of it.
But this game, like for example, Monster Hunter Stories 2 seems much more accessible to that age group.
Absolutely, yeah, I think she'd be down.
Well, still not being a game for kids. Obviously, it's not at all, but it is a game that is accessible for kids.
Exactly, 12, 13, 14 in that bracket is probably going to start hitting that sweet spot for her with something like that to get some of the more involved systems and themes. But this one is definitely hits its stride. They said that too. It's very much a good baby's first RPG in a lot of ways, in a lot of its systems, and for a lot of adults they might find it a bit too cutesy and a bit too simple. But at the same time, as I mentioned in my preview, I appreciated that simplicity because especially if you have something like it on the Switch, it's easy for you to just pick up and do your thing and be like, I'm good now. Going from playing Legend of Mana and how ridiculously convoluted the crafting system and the pet rearing system, the farming system, all the little extra side content systems in that game are, to this where it's give me 4 carrots, some honey, and wood. Here's your armor. Cool. It's a nice breath of fresh air to go I don't need to go pour over forums and Reddit and try and work with pre-made game calculators to try and figure out how to unlock the ultimate weapons, right? It's all there. It's on the list. You just gotta go shopping for it essentially by smashing monsters.
Mm-hmm.
Highly recommend if you're into this kind of thing and you want a quick pick up and play, or if you got kids, this is just hands down a great game to play with them with. And it's also surprisingly well written. I got the odd chuckle out of me. Your character doesn't speak. You're pretty much a mute hero who emotes, and you have this little it's on the box art, this little pink character called Macaron, who's apparently a soldier with you, but Macaron is curiously not available during fights. You just never see them, but is always there in the cutscenes to do all the talking for you. So for some weird reason, Macaron just exists to be your mouthpiece. I'm not sure why, but he's still pretty funny, or it's pretty funny, and everything else is pretty well written. It's a compelling game. I even found myself still, I know how it's probably going to go, but I want to find out how it's going to get there.
And that's what you hope for from a preview, really.
Yeah, exactly. And all the other information's in there, how long it's about going to take. They don't have a lot of end game stuff planned out just now, but there is some DLC coming. So it looks like it's shaping up really great. And what have you been up to? I know you've been playing some stuff that, chronologically, you can't actually talk about it, but by the time this is released, you can.
Yeah, which I will be talking about a lot more in the future, but the game I'm currently playing is the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles, which is a compilation of the Great Ace Attorney and the Great Ace Attorney 2. Finally, they have gotten officially localized and released in the West. For listeners of the show, you might remember that a few years ago, I downloaded the fan translation patch for the Great Ace Attorney. Yeah, and I wrote a review for it. I didn't review the story because that wouldn't have been fair to Capcom, because obviously they had limited impact on the translation, as in none. But these are, fully translated by Capcom's team. The game is being released on PC, Switch, PlayStation. Frankly speaking, it's Ace Attorney. If you like Ace Attorney, you're going to love these games. They're considerably more like the original Ace Attorney than the sequels. There are a lot more developments. There's a jury system in this where you have to convince individual members of the jury to basically lean in your direction rather than proclaim that your client is guilty. The big thing about this game is it takes place at the end of the 19th century. In both Japan and in England. And the game is wonderful. Great story, memorable characters. I mean, if you like Sherlock Holmes, oh boy, you're going to love this because you get to interact with the world's most famous detective, Sherlock Holmes.
The shomeliest guy around?
Yeah, the estate of Arthur Conan Doyle is notoriously litigious when it comes to Sherlock Holmes.
And at this point, our podcast was cut off because we got sued for mentioning his name on the podcast.
So I guess that Capcom kind of just like shrugged and said, whatever. It's still a Victorian steampunk version of Sherlock Holmes, and there's a version of Watson. And yeah, you just go around Victorian London and Japan, solving mysteries, taking on clients, defending them in court. It has the usual insanely convoluted Ace Attorney-esque plots. You have the over-the-top clients and the over-the-top witnesses. And my biggest complaint about the first game was that it was more so than any other Ace Attorney game I ever played, or maybe even any game I've ever played, period. It was entirely set up. I've never played a game that introduced that many mysteries and that many questions and had absolutely no interest whatsoever in actually resolving any of them. So when I played the fan translation, I got to the end of it and I had so many questions, and there was literally no way for me to find out what the answers were aside from watching a translated playthrough on YouTube, which I was not going to do. So I had to wait until the next fan translation came out, the second one, or until Capcom localized. And thankfully they localized it. So now I'm getting all of the answers to the questions I've had for like a year and a half. And I have to say, some of them are very satisfying and some of them are real head scratchers as to what the writer was thinking. Maybe they'll be resolved a little bit in the future. So yeah, I'm not done yet. I still have 2 full cases to play in the second game. I have to say that if you like Ace Attorney, this is going to be a real good investment because there's 5 cases in both games, and these are not minuscule cases, especially the later ones in either game. There is a lot to play through here. So if you like text adventures, if you love Ace Attorney in general, these are going to be well worth your money. But those aren't the only games I was playing. When I was at the cottage, I played another absolutely delightful game that also had to do with murder called Overboard! Inkle is the company that made it, and they made it in just a few months. And it's a text adventure kind of game with there's graphics, a visual novel. And the whole point of it is you and your husband go on this ship. You're traveling to America, and you are the wife. And at the very beginning of it, you push your husband overboard. And then the next day, you have to wander around the ship talking to the other passengers. And you try to almost reverse engineer. I'm trying to think of a good way to describe this. It's like Clue in reverse. You're trying to frame someone on the ship, and you have to like maneuver things. You have to keep your story straight. You have to create suspicion in the eyes of your fellow passengers. And the whole point of the game is you want to get off the ship with A, having perfectly framed someone, B, making sure that you do get your life insurance policy, and C, making sure that there are no loose ends. So it's really wide open. There are a number of really interesting characters on board. It's wide open. In fact, when I first started playing it for a game that is so simple and small, it's almost overwhelming. And then eventually you start to learn the routines of the various passengers on the ship. It's a little bit like Hitman in that way. In order to master the game, you need to know where all passengers are at any given time and how long it takes to get to various areas of the ship. I think it is just wonderful. If you like Agatha Christie, for example, Agatha Christie Murder Mysteries, this is a game that you will love to play. It plays on a lot of the tropes in those stories. And it's kind of like a little bit Groundhog Day-esque. Like whatever you do, if you get arrested at the end, if it get caught for the murder, or if you die, or even if you are mildly successful, you always restart the day and can take it from there and see where else it goes. And I think you can frame literally anyone on board. I got to the best ending, and I kept playing it because it was just so much fun. It was delightful, and I know it's available for Steam. I played it on Switch, ran fantastic. So yeah, Overboard, I highly recommend it. It's a lot of fun. I should have a review coming out for it pretty soon.
Are either of you two Ace Attorney fans? I mean, I've had passing interest in the series for a long time. I just have yet to make the investment, and they all sound really good.
No, I've never played them. They look kind of intriguing, but typically I think they've been on handheld, right? And I've never been like a handheld person.
They were originally released. The first 3 were released for Game Boy Advanced in Japan, and then they were remastered with a single edition for the first game for the DS. But since then, they have been released for just about every platform you can think
Have they
of.
been ported to Steam now?
Yeah, they're all on Steam. Switch has the original trilogy. I would not recommend downloading the original trilogy for iOS. The version it's terrible. It's really not the best way to play the game on iOS, but the Steam version is fantastic. It plays really, really well on the Switch. And the nice thing, there are a lot of entries about this. There are 6 entries in the mainline series. There's 2 spin-off games starring the prosecutor. There are 3 seasons of anime. There is a crossover game starring Phoenix Wright and Professor Layton. And there is this. And this, because it's a prequel, it's a really good jump-on point because you literally don't need to know any of the characters. There's some ancestors in the game from characters that you meet in the main series, but there's no real connection between them. There's a few Easter eggs. So yeah, if you ever feel like playing a very engaging visual novel adventure game, the Ace Attorney games are great. And if you want to jump on board, the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles is a real good place to start.
Good to know.
Yeah, I'm a fan. Obviously, I'm a fan. I loved it. I played a friggin' fan translation of the game, and reviewed it.
So when are you going to make your game primer?
That's actually, it's something I was thinking about.
That's a great idea. Oh, I like it.
No. Why did you say that, Greg?
I object.
I have to say that one of the things I was retroactively most impressed with this is the job that Scarlet Study, they were the fan translators, did with the first game. There are some significant differences. I think that Capcom's pun game, in terms of names, is better than Scarlet Study's.
It's an art form.
Yeah, it is an art form. I think Scarlet Study did a remarkable job of translating this. At the time, I felt it was so similar to Capcom's style and how well they matched their translation to the established Ace Attorney tone. And while playing this game, I think there are actually a few places where Scarlet Study managed to nail the tone even a little bit more than Capcom did. It's give or take. There are other places where Capcom obviously did do a better job, but it's just, I've always been very impressed by fan translations, and these folks did a remarkable job. I can only imagine, they were apparently midway through translating the Great Ace Attorney 2 when the compilation was released. So I can only imagine how it must have hurt to have done all that work and then know that nothing's really going to come from it because, the official version is going to be released. I think I checked the website when it was announced and they released a very classy statement about it. But I gotta say, that must have been heartbreaking. But again, if it wasn't for them translating the first game and showing that the interest was there, there's a good chance that we might not have even gotten these. So I really want to applaud them and say that their translation is extraordinarily good, even when compared to the Capcom. So that was a nice thing to realize as I finished playing the first game.
They're a series, like I said, that I've been meaning to get to. I like the idea of them. It's just a deep dive. Even Professor Layton's something I want to get back to as well, and I want to see that crossover, did we get the crossover? Did it get localized?
We got it. It's on 3DS. I think, unfortunately, the 3DS, I think that's one of the only Ace Attorney titles that is only available on 3DS at this point. It's never been put on another platform.
Yeah.
There is still one Ace Attorney game, Ace Attorney Investigations 2, with Miles Edgeworth, that has not been localized. It was on DS. However, I don't think the team at Scarlet Study did it, but I know that a lot of the team members, they did a fan translation of that too, and I have played that, and it is an exceptional game.
I wouldn't be shocked if you get an official announcement sometime soon.
Well, I think they've basically run out of things to re-release, so at some point they might do it.
Or give you some new stuff.
Yeah.
Ace Attorney VR. That'd be super kind of fun.
That would be fun. You'd really need to perfect your objection, and you need to make sure that you don't accidentally throw the controller into the television set across the room. Right. Objection! Crash! Oop.
A very, very hearty objection. Well, before we wrap up the show, now that we're kind of running to the end of things, first things, we did briefly mention just the not so great news of the not so great upgrade to the Switch that happened while we were on hiatus, and that is underwhelming, and all of our predictions at E3 for what we wanted from a Switch Pro, and they're like, nah, here's this.
The only way the announcement could have been more apt is if they set it to the losing theme from The Price is Right. Boom, 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 boom. But here's the joke on us, is the thing sold like gangbusters.
Yeah.
So obviously there was a demand there for a sharper and bigger screen.
No, and it's great. Like I think for late adopters, for new buyers, it's awesome. Like if I didn't have one, yeah, I'd be excited for that upgrade. But I also would have been mad if I was still holding off for I'm going to get the Switch Pro. and that's all it was, I would have been like, ugh.
I mean, I don't actually think that anyone, we joke about it, and we joked about it the last few episodes, and I joked about it earlier on this one, but I don't think that the people who expected the Switch Pro to be released were necessarily wrong in their desire, because as was pointed out with both of these Switch ports, it's chugging. It's just chugging. The frame rate issues, the fact that it's slow, the load times, like it's just not competing anymore with, especially now that the PlayStation 5 is out with the SSD, it's just not competing anymore.
Yeah, they're going to get left behind, I think, by some developers, I would be shocked if we see a new system announcement in the next year or two.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like I've always maintained that Nintendo is not in the same business necessarily as Sony and Microsoft when it comes to video games.
Yeah, we talked about that a bit ago.
Yeah, but even still, they desperately need a more powerful machine. I would adore the idea of Nintendo's next release, which will likely be a new Nintendo Switch, because I think they'd be absolutely silly to leave behind this branding.
Maybe, I don't know. They said that they're not good. They have no plans to iterate, but
yeah, but that's Nintendo. These are the people who released the Wii U. I think that at some point it would be really cool if Nintendo actually decided to like push their way to the front of the pack and be like, okay, we're going to push this forward and we're going to make this thing as powerful, if not more powerful, than the PlayStation 5. But I don't think they're going to do that. I think
they want to make it consumer friendly.
Yeah, this thing is going to be super consumer friendly. It just would be nice if it was as powerful as a smartphone.
Yeah.
But anyway, I rarely play my Switch in handheld mode. I played it like that when I was at the cottage, obviously, but like I usually play it on the TV. So this isn't an update for me. But for someone like Solosi, I don't think Solosi's buying it, but I know Solosi plays the Switch primarily in handheld. So I think that he would be playing that. This would be an upgrade that would be worthy of someone who really plays it on the go or on the couch or in bed or that kind of thing.
It's just a question of when do we get like the more improved Switch Lite then that has all these but as handheld only, you know? I don't know if that'll be a thing or not.
Probably Nintendo is done announcing Switch hardware for at least, I don't think we'll get anything next year. I would be stunned if we got anything in 2023 and 2023 even.
They're just going to keep making cool games that they optimize for their system and we'll all be happy for it.
Yeah. We also have to remember that often as reviewers, we do review the game prior to release, and there are often 0-day patches that update it and actually make it run a little bit smoother. That's not always the case. But I mean, when I played Crosscode, for example, it was a disaster on the Switch, and this was well after release. So it's just not that powerful a system. I love my Switch, don't get me wrong, but we're always going to be complaining about frame rate issues. That's just the reality of it. It's the reality of the platform.
Well, until people can also get their hands on PS5s, though, it's kind of the way to go, I guess.
Okay, you're not wrong, yeah.
Or Xbox Series SXs.
There's been a lot of news over the last couple of days, which has been really interesting. And like, in my mind, you get really excited and then you are like, oh, just like the new Nintendo Switch with OLED, and that's it. Okay. Another one for me is the new Bravely Default game, Bravely Default Brilliant Lights, which is coming out on mobile devices.
Yeah, and it could be really neat, or it could be just, gacha for jobs.
I'm a little worried that it might be gacha because I'm looking at Bravely Default 2 took place in a completely different world, but based on the screenshots that have come out with Brilliant Lights, there are characters from Bravely Default and Bravely Second in this game.
Yeah, it's going to be, like Record Keeper and everything else of get fan favorites, and there you go.
I'm really, really hoping. It looks great. It looks like Bravely Default.
It does look sharp.
But I really, really would love if this game came out in the West and it was its own thing. I recently replayed, for a bunch of reasons, Final Fantasy Dimensions, which for iOS, which is a game I really wish that Square Enix would update because it hasn't been updated in a few years and it doesn't recognize keyboards or controllers. So I had to play it with the touchscreen, which is very irritating. But having a full-blown original JRPG experience on iOS is something that I love, is very delightful. And I wish that I really hope that Bravely Default Brilliant Lights delivers that kind of thing and not just grind for the characters from the earlier games, that sort of
thing. Cory, do you have anything you're looking forward to?
Gotcha.
I think for me right now, I'm pretty excited about the Final Fantasy 4, 5, and 6 releases.
Right.
And when I say releases, I guess I do mean on the PC, but I'm really holding out for that, that Switch announcement, any day now.
It just seems like it would make sense.
Yeah, from every possible standpoint.
It makes no sense. There must have been something going on behind the scenes in that where Nintendo asked for too much money or something.
Yeah, or
I don't
it's
know.
A delayed release or...
I know that's not how it works, but there has to be some reason why they aren't releasing it on Switch, which is the natural platform to release the games on.
Yeah, hopefully they're listening right now.
I think somebody So we were talking in the RPG fan staff forums, and somebody said, I can't remember who it was, said that maybe the reason why is just because of the mobile market in Japan is so massive that maybe that's the reason why we're getting it on mobile first.
Yeah, it's possible consoles and stuff could drop later.
I mean, it's a no-brainer. You're right, Cory. It's why isn't this on Switch?
Yeah, they could just emulate it. Honestly, it would work. It would work fine on a Switch.
Who knows? We'll see.
Mhm.
But yeah, I'm looking forward to those too. And Zach, anything that you're hotly anticipating coming up?
Honestly, I hate to say it, but Endwalker.
Oh, cool. Yep,
is the thing that I think about most days.
Endwalker, what's that? Is that
a? Sorry, like I know Caitlin's not here, but she really is in spirit. I mean, like Endwalker looks amazing. I'm also looking forward to the Pixel remasters as well. So I guess a lot of Final Fantasy, which feels good to be excited about Final Fantasy again. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a good few years to have that.
Yeah, despite chaos.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll hopefully get some
Indeed,
16
yeah.
announcements and some more about that once we get to the Tokyo Game Show this year. As far as rounding out the episode, I do have one quick question for y'all, because I have been, since I reviewed Legend of Mana, pretty much just playing Legend of Mana. I could just play that game a whole lot. I finally completed my first run through of it again and decided to go into New Game Plus. And I've been trying to experiment with crafting more and understand it as much as one can understand it. I'm glad other people have done the work for me, because it is deep. It is. I don't know if anyone else has played it here, but the crafting system for weapons and armor is just so convoluted and fascinating, but it's weird, complex chemistry to make it work. Yeah, it's a bizarre system. Anyways, I've been playing it, and it was making me think, if you were a classic desert island question for you all, if you were on a desert island, you can only have one game to play for the rest of your days, which one would it be? And I was very torn with Legend of Mana, and I was like, I'd probably Collection of Mana, because I could just replay all three of those games ad infinitum for some weird reason. There's just something about them that I can just go back through them again and again and again.
I mean, I hate to bring up the same game again, but it's true.
Mm-hmm.
It's Final Fantasy 14 for sure. There's just like so much content there. It's so good.
That's true. Although I will counter, you don't have internet.
Okay, well, if that's
So you just get to look at the launch screen. That's the entire game.
Why won't you patch?
Okay, I still 14 then. Oh, I was kidding. I guess for me it would probably be Suikoden 2. That's the game I've replayed the most times, and
You could keep replaying it.
I love it just as much every time I play it. Final Fantasy Tactics would be in the conversation too.
Yeah, that's another one that I could redo a lot.
Not to veer too close to recent news, but for me, it would be Diablo 2. In that game, I played it a whole time when I was in middle school and high school, and you can play it offline.
That's true.
So I should be good playing it on the island.
Who cares about BattleNet? And Jono?
Tetris.
Yeah, just nonstop Tetris.
Tetris. I am 100% serious. If I'm on a desert island, I do not want a game that is narrative based or has a limited amount of content in it. I want a game that will stimulate my mind indefinitely. And if I wanted that, I need a puzzle game that can offer me unlimited possibilities. And I'm sorry, I know this is an RPG podcast, but Tetris is the ultimate desert island game in my mind.
Yeah, I can appreciate
I
that.
believe there was an episode of Retro Encounter in which it was proven that Tetris is the greatest RPG of all time. So.
Yeah, I can get behind you on that one.
I would love if there was a Tetris RPG.
I think I'd do Magical Drop then if I
Yeah.
was doing a puzzle game or Puzzle Bobble, nonstop Puzzle Bobble.
If I couldn't pick Tetris, I would definitely pick a game that just has unlimited replay value that you can play for, like Mini Metro, for example, or a game like that which has variations upon variations upon variations. And you might get a little sick of it, but at the very least, it's always going to offer you a slightly new experience rather than like Final Fantasy VI, for example, which I adore. But I imagine after about 10 years on a desert island with only Final Fantasy VI as my companion, I would eventually want to throw it into the ocean.
Like Cell Yeah.
Celis style?
Oh, that was dark.
No, you're just going to grab your laptop and just load it up with the other game that you can play infinitely, which is Fallout 3 and all of its patches, or Morrowind and all of its patches. Just try them all, good and bad. That'll keep you busy for a good couple decades.
I think you have a point there. If I was to pick a game that's not a puzzle game, it would definitely have to be a massive open world game. So at the very least, I could have the illusion of being able to navigate a massive space.
Yeah, like Elder Scrolls never stops giving side quests. It's designed not to. Like, you can never stop having them, so that'll keep you going. And it's a big world to go around. Yeah, that'd be a fun one, actually.
Open world game has to be it. Big happy open world too, not like a Fallout open world. Because if I'm on a desert island, I don't want to be exploring a post-apocalyptic nuclear wasteland.
Yeah, I think I'd like Oblivion or blah 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 Dragonborn,
Skyrim?
not Dragonborn, Skyrim. Thank you, because I just find those very nice to walk around in, especially if you do it like before you trigger like constant dragon attacks or before you trigger constant Oblivion portals opening. Like it's a very serene game to just enjoy the environment. And yeah, that's a great point when you're sitting there on a desert island. You're like, I'm gonna go up north today.
Yeah.
But thank you for humoring me. And the good thing is, at least with Skyrim, you can play it on your Switch.
Right there, yeah.
Yeah, you got everything. It's on everything as well. But that brings us to the end of another round of Random Encounter. As we mentioned in the early part of the show, Jono's going to be taking over for a little bit. I am taking a break for, just to be frank, mental health reasons. I need a break from things. I'm a person who is far too busy for my own good some days, and too many things have been falling through the cracks for me in various ways. So I just kind of want to step back and breathe for a bit. And I've always felt that pressure as the host of the show. Like I was like, I can't take a break because then what about the show? And some of that's also probably just my own ego for not just reaching out to be like, hey, somebody else host it, or now Jono, right? So it's been a hard call to admit that like I need to take a break. And this is my frankness to anyone else out there. Don't be afraid to take a break. Play a game for you. Do a thing for you. Just be chill. Breathe. It's okay. Things can get done later. And you probably have more people around you willing to support you than you know.
Do you want to know what, Greg? I think that I remember about a year and a half ago on the first episode of Random we did after the pandemic started. At the very end of it, you and I offered some advice to the audience about being kind to yourself and recognizing that in times like this, you can't do it all. You need to take a break, and you need to be able to not just a vacation, but let go or let other people help you. And I remember we said that, and neither one of us took our own advice for a year and a half. Yeah. And at some point, I think that a lot of people are going to have to realize that they need a break. They need a vacation. They need to be able to do something to decompress. And I actually really think that you taking this time is very smart.
I appreciate it.
And I will hold the fort while you are gone.
I'm sure you will.
But seriously, I think you are about to take a well-deserved vacation.
Thanks, friends.
And so you have a good time.
I plan to. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with it. I'm sure I'll probably have more than enough other things to get busy. It's mostly just trying to get caught up with things around like life things and recenter with that stuff. So yeah. Maybe I'll get into Monster Hunter Stories 1.
Oh, that's a good idea. Playing a game for fun is a bit of a novelty in our line of work.
Some days, yes. Yeah, sometimes you just want to take your time on it.
I'm loving the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles, but at the same time, in the back of my mind, I'm always like, there's always something churning, analyzing, being like, is this really working? And that's the kind of way it is whenever you're podcasting about games or you're a game reviewer or whatever. You're always analyzing the game, even if you love it.
I have the same problem as an actor and a movie maker, a filmmaker, that you sit there and you're like, how did they do that shot? How did that happen? Wonder how casting that scene was. And anyways, so yeah, listeners, thank you for your patience with that. Please be kind and loving, as I know you all are, with Jono being awesome, as I know he will be on the podcast for the next 2 or 3 episodes or whatever. And I will see you all soon enough. In the meantime, you can send all the love to podcast@rpgfan.com. I appreciate hearing things other than this. I have a very insistent person that keeps following up and wants to sell me lots and lots of chairs. I don't know what's going on, but they think the podcast really needs chairs.
Wait, you've been offered chairs? I've been sitting on the floor for every episode I've done of this damn podcast since I've started, and this guy's been offering you chairs?
You could have had 100 folding chairs in your apartment for $17.99 or whatever. I don't know.
Oh, no, forget it. We're changing things. When you're gone, I'm buying some chairs, god darn it.
Dipping into the kitty. But yes, we'll get you chairs if that's the case. And in the meantime, you can check out episodes of Random Encounter, of course, but we also have Rhythm Encounter back with a new episode, and I think there's a good backlog now ready to go that you've been helping get edited and out the door, so that should be coming up shortly as well. You have tons of Retro Encounter to go listen to, especially as we talked about the GOAT episode of defining Tetris as an RPG.
They just released some bangers too. They released it's a 2-parter episode.
It is the Essential 10, which is a sequel to episodes that came out 5 years ago, back when Josh was still hosting. So yeah, they're very long.
You're on it, right?
I am. we have some discussions sometimes,
Yeah, that'd be a hard list to compile, I'm not going to lie. I mean, look how hard it was to figure out a Desert Island game.
I haven't finished the second episode yet, but it's a banger.
Nice. So go check that out. And then, Rob and Hatterback, I think they had a bit of a hiatus too, but they've been churning out episodes of the Phoenix Edge podcast as well. So you can keep up to current news and exciting things. And otherwise, thank you everybody for listening. Jono, as always, thank you for being a gracious, wonderful co-host with me and keeping it going.
My pleasure.
Zach, again, great job on your team, and thank you very much for coming on and sharing your thoughts. You are well-spoken, and I like having you around.
Thanks. I had a good time.
And Cory, it's so nice having you on the podcast for the first time. You're great, and please come back and do more with us.
Thanks. I'd love to come back.
Thank you very much, everyone, for listening, and until the next episode I'm on, you take care, and enjoy listening to the dulcet tones of Jono and the gang on the next episode. Cheers.
Bye, everyone.